2-01 Lake Orion Stadium Elementary School Wetland Permit. It's located at 244 Stadium Drive, Sidwell 0914400013. Applicant is present tonight. If they'd like to introduce, or if you're just here to participate in the conversation, we can do it either way. If you want to introduce yourself and state your address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Wes Goodman, the Director of Operations for Lake Orion Schools, owner's rep for the construction projects. I'm 20 Indian Trail, Lake Orion is my home address. We're here tonight for a permit review of Stadium Drive Elementary for wetlands, and that has made it to Eagle, and we did not receive a written. We're hoping to get a written approval today. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we did get a verbal from Eagle that the permit at their level is approved, and we should have that hopefully within a week. They said they're pretty backed up administratively. We're requesting this due to a parking lot improvement plan that we have for the elementary school. Part of our bond issue is safety and security, and a big piece of that is separation of our parent drop-off loops and our bus loops. And as you know, that road can be quite busy, and there's not a lot of staging area for our parents to get off the road into the drop-off loop currently. And so our expansion is to the north, and that's where it kind of goes over this wetland area. So any questions? I have my computer here to show you the plans if you'd like, but if you're good, I can answer any questions. Hopefully our engineer couldn't be here this evening, so but I'm pretty prepared, I hope.
Sounds good. We all have the plans in front of us tonight within our packet, so I think we're okay. Since it is a wetland review, it does not prompt a planning review, but it does prompt an engineering review, so I will turn it over to our consultants for their brief overview of their review letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our letter of January 12th, 2022 is our first review of the wetland application for these school improvements. As noted in our letter, there are two small wetlands located just south of Stadium Drive, both totaling just under 1/10 of an acre. Wetland A is a more linear wetland, is also regulated by the state, as the applicant indicated. They're in the process of wrapping up that approval with the state. There's also a smaller wetland to the east that's not state regulated, but it's our opinion that both wetlands are regulated by the township, seeing as how they both do provide some stormwater filtration and a small level of stormwater storage. So both would be regulated by the township. The applicant is proposing to fill both of the wetlands completely for the improvements as mentioned. They do have their own stormwater management system proposed as part of the project. So it's our opinion that the benefit that the wetlands are providing at this point will be mitigated through the creation of their own stormwater management system as part of the project. Overall, it's our opinion that the application is in compliance with the township engineering standards and ordinances, and we have no other concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. With that said, there isn't any other reviews, professional reviews, so I'll turn it over to my fellow planning commission for their thoughts. If you have any questions for both our engineer or our applicant, this would be the time. If there's any discussion points, I'm open to motion too.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the Planning Commission approves the wetland permit for PC 2022-01 Stadium Drive Elementary located at 244 Stadium Drive on parcel 0914 400-013. Approval is based on the fact that the proposed improvement is unlikely to pollute, impair, or destroy the existing wetland to the north. Number two, the proposed land use is consistent with the zoning of the property, and the proposed methods of construction are the least impactful possible to the wetlands and natural features of the site. And number three, the applicant is providing the required stormwater management facilities and will not impact any major characteristics of the wetlands to the north.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Support.
Support by Mr. St. Henry. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none from the commission. Any public discussion on the motion, including from the applicant? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
St. Henry?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Reckon?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Angel?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. That leads us to our second item of new business here tonight, which would be PC case 2022-02, Ferndale Maze LLC Ordinance 154 application for medical processing at 163 Premier Drive, Sidwell 0935476001. There is two items on our agenda tonight for the same Sidwell and property, but we do want two separate official motions for record. I would like to just state for the record that I have previously with my firm done work at 163 Premier Drive, although this is with a different company completely, and it would be their build out, so we strictly did the core and shell, so there's no interest from myself or my company in this party, just for stating for the record. So I don't believe there's any conflict of interest, and if anyone feels otherwise, I'm happy to recuse myself. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I see no conflict of interest,
Thank you.
potential or real.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. All right, with that said, our ordinance 154, medical processing and adult use, is officially reviewed for our planning and zoning department, along with the fire marshal and the building official. Both the fire marshal and building official are recommending approval that the application is in substantial completion. Same thing goes for Ms. Gerling's review, our planning and zoning director, that the essentially that everything that is received is, she's agreeable to recommend approval within the application. Anything that I missed, Ms. Gerling?
No, I mean, the review's the same for both. It's the same location, and that is what is looked at by planning and zoning is the location requirements within ordinance. And they met all of it.
Okay. Additional questions, comments? Someone is willing to make a motion, I will be willing to entertain it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant approval of the application as required per ordinance 154 for PC 2022-02, Ferndale Maze LLC for medical processing located at 163 Premier Drive on parcel 0935476001. Based upon the following facts, that the property is properly located in an IP zoning district. It meets all of the distance requirements per ordinance 154. It is located in a building that has ingress and egress with less, on an egress road with less than 6,000 vehicles per day. And finally, is located in a building that has ingress and egress road that does not service as a road that also serves for residential zoning. This recommendation for approval is based upon the condition that the applicant meets all applicable township ordinances and promulgated standards of the township, and prior to opening shall demonstrate to the township that it meets the rules and regulations promulgated by the state marijuana regulatory agency.
I have a motion to have support.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Urbanowski. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Urbanowski?
Yes.
Gross?
Yes.
Kinjal,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
St. Henry,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. All right, that leads us to the next agenda item for pretty much a similar case, but for adult use processing at 163 Premier Drive for Sidwell 0935476001. There is no, the reviews essentially are the same for both, so if there's any discussions, willing to have it. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, since this is an application for adult processing in the same building and location as the previous motion, I would move that we grant approval of the application as required per ordinance 154 for PC 2022-03, Ferndale Mays LLC for adult processing located at 163 Premier Drive, parcel 0935-476-001. Based upon the facts that the property is located in an IP zoning district, it meets all the distance requirements shown in ordinance 154, is in a building that has an ingress and egress road with less than 6,000 vehicles per day, and is also located in a building that is an ingress and egress road that does not service as a road that serves for residential zoning. Recommendation for approval is based upon the condition that the applicant meets all applicable township ordinances and promulgated standards of the township, and prior to opening shall demonstrate to the township that it meets the rules and regulations promulgated by the state marijuana regulatory agency.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Support once again by Mrs. Urbanowski. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, any public discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Gross,
Yes.
St. Henry,
Yes.
Urbanowski,
Yes.
Bracken,
Yes.
Kinjal,
Yes.
Walker,
Yes.
Reynolds,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. That concludes all of our new business this evening, so thank you for the applicants that were present here tonight. We're going to circle back to unfinished business for PC case 2021-07, our 5-year master plan update, as we didn't conclude all of our thoughts at our workshop previous to this meeting. So I'd like to circle back to Mrs. Urbanowski had a comment on temporary housing, I believe, as that was one of your subjects you were looking to touch base on.
Indeed, it was.
If you want to give me a page number-ish, then I can get close. No pressure.
I have the old number.
So do I.
Do you?
It was 100
Well, we can get close.
today.
It's the, hold on. Good gravy. There's a lot of
Talking about
trees over here.
104, 104 temporary spaces? Is that what
Yes,
you're-
thank you.
That's 104.
Which is,
Strategy number 4.
Correct?
yes. I'm not sure, I'm not really a big fan of this. And I'll tell you why. Just, it's the, it makes me think about, and I know it mentions here the temporary storefronts and things like that, you know, during COVID and, you know, off using those parking spaces besides restaurants and stuff like that for the igloos and all that, and I understand that. But when I think of temporary spaces, I think of like the festivals and like food truck things and that type of thing. And, you know, I'm sure all of you know that I was the director of the chamber for 4 years. And I know that a lot of our brick and mortar businesses weren't really favorable about those kinds of things because it takes away from their business in their opinion. And, you know, I can understand that. So I guess, I mean, I understand if, you know, if you're thinking like maybe a farmer's market or something like that, but I'm not sure how I feel about pop-up spaces that might compete with our brick and mortar businesses.
I may just
ahead, Ron.
expand what, the concept of this is really more, it's temporary in that it is often a temporary use of a vacant piece of property before it develops to something permanent. But the idea is that these would be structures that are much like you see right here, which is This is from Walloon Lake, so this is a 10-foot by 10-foot structure. And this is a place where an entrepreneur within the community could start up a business and see if it has footing. And if they are doing well, they may then move into a space where things go well. That's what this is all about. You have these in Campus Martius, in Detroit. These are structures that are built primarily on property that may be in transition, or it may just be a little nook that's hard to actually build out within maybe one of the village areas or one of the hamlet areas. And it could be a place to promote entrepreneurship. So that's what the concept's all about. And there are many communities, there are some communities in Michigan that are doing this successfully. And we thought it could be an idea of something to pursue, but that's the idea.
Could these be like mobile units?
They could. Generally, they're movable. They're not attached to a foundation, or it's a very minor attachment. It's usually on a piece of pavement, and you build this 10 by 10 wooden structure, and then it's placed there, and they can be moved if they have to be moved, yes. They don't necessarily have wheels usually.
So I want to give Ms. Gingell an opportunity to speak to. I know everyone's kind of got some thoughts, so we've heard at least kind of the background on it, but I know this was one of your points of discussion too.
Yeah, I tend to disagree with Kim. I think you're thinking of it as being popped up in our village, in the downtown area where it takes away from the brick and mortar stores. I think it would be somewhere different. It wouldn't be popped up like a festival would in our streets right downtown, kind of driving business
Right.
away at the same time while they're trying to bring people in. I think it would be, you have to think of it as like at Wildwood or something like that, where there's other spots.
Food trucks?
Where there aren't yes, like a food truck pop-up, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, so my comment would be is I can see, Kim, where you're coming from, because it talks about pop-up storefronts, right? So, and I think maybe one tweak of this, of creating temporary spaces is a little bit more to what you're getting after, of not competing with businesses per se, and having a unique function that wouldn't necessarily work in a traditional storefront opportunity. The kind of accidental, like, oh, that's really cool, or, the things that maybe aren't solely approved by our ordinance, but because it's a temporary structure, it's allowable, I don't know, an igloo village, and it's just something fun, or the stuff that's popped up in the village. So I think I can see where you're getting after and how you read this, and I think it's a valid point to speak to how maybe we modify some text here.
I think so. So I guess the bottom line is I'm obviously pro-business because I wouldn't have been with the chamber I'm all about entrepreneurship. I definitely think that needs to be higher up for sure. I guess I just don't want to, if we've got our businesses that we just said, in the last meeting are the meat and potatoes of our community, which they are. I mean, I can name a million of them right now that support everything in this community. I don't want them to feel like I want to make sure that we're being careful on how we're wording this, because I have been to the Campus Martius. I think it's amazing. I think it's great.
Really nice.
And I don't necessarily think that it would always be in the village or whatever, but I just want to make sure that we're being careful with that.
Do we need to define what temporary is then?
I think we could add some language here to be more descriptive about it's the users within the structures may change, but the structures are likely to be there for a fairly extended period of time.
So,
Right?
so are you saying that, for example, if, I'm throwing this other, at Canterbury Village across the street. They have a variety of different festivals, all summer, all fall. And I'm not saying that they do it at Canterbury Village, but like they have a variety of vendors, retail vendors, food vendors and so forth come in all summer, all fall. They help drive traffic to the area to support the businesses that are already there and so forth. Or another situation may be with the Dragon on the Lake Festival and some of the pop-up stores and retail that go in the parking lot areas and things like that. I tend to agree with Kim that that's great for those festival settings and things like that take place, special events that take place around Orion. But I don't really see where we should put a ton of energy and effort into this concept within the realm of a economic development portion of a township master plan.
The difference between what you're describing and what this envisions, the festivals last a couple of weeks or one weekend or whatever. This would be something where a vendor would rent one of these spaces for the season or for a year, and they're trying to start a new business. They can't afford to open a retail store that's 20 by 80, okay? They can only afford a small place to see if their business can get some legs. So they would go there, spend the year, see if it works, and if it doesn't work, they would go, someone else would come in the next year, and they would take it over. So these are small, inexpensive places where you could establish that type of business. It's not intended for festivals, and it's only going to be there for a week or two. That's really not what this is.
Okay, what you just described needs to be rewritten in this then. 'Cause
Okay.
what
Yeah, no, it sounds
you-
like we
what
need-
you
it needs to be
What you said
clarified.
is different.
Okay.
Maybe if it was something more of a long-term temporary pop-up rather than for the festival.
We could call it create incubator spaces instead.
I like that a lot.
Now, that's a different animal.
Yeah.
That's a completely different concept.
I was gonna say, we're kind of talking two different subjects. You know, one is the festival concept, right? You're gonna pop up a tent, you're gonna be there for the weekend, you know, you're
Sell
hurting foot
fireworks,
traffic,
yeah.
right? You know, or you're selling your T-shirts, right, from your online store. Here, we're saying, you know, here's an opportunity for economic investment in the community, but almost that kind of missing middle component of it to where you can still come here and jump in even though you can't afford other retail spaces. Now, for me, the third component of this, that I feel that it touches or maybe kind of laps the two together would be is, you know, what if there was a vision for Wildwood, or what if, you know, and there was, right? Like that, the concession stand, the bathrooms, that didn't always exist there, even the amphitheater didn't always exist. So, you know, the idea of testing something out or kind of having the grassroots effort, you know, downtown. I mean, if anyone knows where like the Flint Street alleyway is, like I built that in a weekend with pallets, and then someone came back there and goes like, I know how to build that better, nicer, and it's, you know, more permanent, and then they bought heaters and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, and it was supposed to last one season, and it lasted 3, and then they said, oh, it's not looking so great, but now everyone wants to get their, you know, senior photos down there, all this kind of stuff. So I think there's a way to touch base on a few of these ideas within this concept that we need to just make sure are clear, because I think there is some pushback of like, well, does that propose a threat, right? Versus that stepping stone opportunity or the tested out, you know, opportunity. So that entrepreneurship that was referenced earlier, I think is an important benefit to this strategy, but also the, what if we give it a whirl and see where it goes? You know, what about Agawam? You know, do we try this out and then, all right, now we can get the ball rolling and understand that, you know, the outdoor Christmas village might work really well there, right? And even maybe some of our businesses work well engaging in that because it's a unique opportunity that just started from an idea. So that was some of my thoughts there, is that we need to maybe circle this around to kind of a complete image that fits within our community. Go ahead, Joe.
So Rod, just reword it some.
Yeah, I think I get the
Yeah.
direction. Yeah.
Tammy?
Only comment I want to make on it is I know anytime with the master plan that you come out of the master plan with text amendments, but what I'm hearing and knowing our ordinance with the no accessory structure without a principal structure, no accessory use without a principal use, we get calls all day long, well, and I know this isn't commercial, this is residential, but, oh, there's a skinny little lake lot, and I want to put a garage on it because I want to store boats because I can't fit it in my little lake lot. And so the ordinance as it is, I'm not saying I'm against this, I just think there's a lot of repercussions in the ordinance that there's going to be a lot to be rewritten. You know, we currently have open air business and open-air business and outdoor sales, which are temporary uses, that allow the pumpkin tent, the Christmas tree tent.
different.
That is different. And I'm not saying I'm against it, I just want to alert everyone to the trickle-down things that need to be thought of.
Understood. So my question to you would be is, what if it wasn't a 18-month or 20-month event, you know, that said it's a entrepreneur, you know, workshop village or something, right? Then in that instance, right, so I think there would be a way to structure it that the temporary structure is associated with a term or an event, even though it's not a weekend dragon on the lake, right? But it's more of a bigger picture of, you know, I don't know, I just throwing this out there, but it's like Christmas Village at Camp Agawam, right? What if it is 4 months, you know? I mean, that, and it's associated with that. That's how I look at this, is that it's gonna have to be, you know, more of that placemaking, like we're gonna take a lot, it's empty, we're gonna put some food trucks on it for 6 months. Yes, it's not permanent. Yes, it probably needs to be a PUD if it stands there longer than X, Y, and Z, but at least this is how we're going to get there off the bat. Agree, disagree? As one channel to do it.
Sure. I think you would have to be very careful with the wording of that whole thing.
For sure. And this is like the legitimized text, right? And that's why Tammy's bringing this up. So, and I'm just asking out loud of if it is a, you know, I don't know how some of these have happened, right? But at the same time, I know going to school in Detroit, you know, what's happened down there now, you know, some of it was just a happy accident or I'm gonna do it and beg for forgiveness later type of a measure. Now, it's a very different situation, but, you know, some of these things, if organized in the right way, you know, aren't necessarily a threat to our businesses, but rather kind of creating that destination effect. So maybe we need a little more detail, you know, and maybe as we redevelop this text that we can word something in there or provide an example that kind of tees it up in a range that would fit versus just this open-ended, yeah, we allow temporary structures, right?
So with the temporary structure, no site plan?
So
Do you have formal parking?
I would say,
So they would come in with something that would still go through formal approval for the safety and parking of cars and,
how I would envision this is that it's like an event application, right? It just happens to be something that's not 2 days. It might, you know, or some sort of special, you know, specialty retail something along those
Come
lines.
in as permanent.
Yeah, true.
Could go-
Or temp,
combination.
yeah, long-term temporary permit or something, so, I mean,
Long-term.
well, whatever, I don't. Well, I guess I'm trying to go after, like, there's temporary structures that are meant to be in place for 5 years, right?
Right.
A school rents portables for 5 years and before they add on.
And that's my question, where are these going to be?
Right. Is this like a Hamlet
drawing a sketch
Village?
earlier.
Would that make sense in those areas?
That could be a perfect opportunity for one. You, in a
Say it again?
Hamlet area
The
where you're-
Hamlets and the Village areas?
Yeah, where
That
you're
would-
trying to generate some interest to walk around, and you've got a vacant parcel, and you're trying to spur some
Okay.
entrepreneurial interest, and someone says, I want to put 10 of these up on this, and here's my plan, and I'm going to try it out for 4 years and see how it goes.
I mean, that,
And we do it now, right? I mean, we do, it just isn't, you know, we don't necessarily have that platform open, but Jesse Decker and all, you know, those are things that kind of just organically have evolved and be like, wow, that'd be one more thing, and now we're gonna consider the restroom facility there if we had the right means, you know, I think that's test it out before you go throw $2 million at the economic investment.
Do we call this some sort of Orion business incubator zone?
The
would leave it.
OIZ.
Could be in a number of
that's
places.
essentially-
It's not
Could
really
it be,
one place.
could it be? Yes, but I think that it's more or less the idea, right? Because it could be the chamber, it could be in partnership with the village, it could be us, it could be Parks and Rec, you know,
yeah. I mean, it could,
so. Okay. So we need a little bit of rework to incorporate our thoughts and understanding of it. Okay? Additional comments?
Thank you.
Also, just one quick observation on the density plan, there were a couple of numbers that ended up on top of the state recreation area. Those will come off of there. We'll clean that up. That's just a minor note, but I just wanted to mention that.
Understood. Additional sections you guys want to kind of thumb through and,
Right.
yeah.
Tackle the map?
Yep, that was one of the next things. Any other major sections you want to discuss?
No, I did have one other question. And I think you mentioned this earlier, because I actually said, under implementation, natural and historic resources, what is the corridor open space preservation overlay district? And you mentioned that earlier, so that's like a new concept.
That is a new concept. It is not in your ordinance, correct?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's switch gears here. Same topic, don't get too excited, future land use map. We had a couple of letters, and we obviously had some public comment here tonight about future land use. So let's transition over to that map and discuss. I don't have it here to pull up. Well, I guess I do, and
Yeah, it's in there.
anyone have a page off the
It's,
top there?
It is page 136.
Thank you. Try not to make everyone dizzy going up and down and all around, so. Okay.
Hey, I've got some thoughts on the
Go ahead,
master
Mr.
plan, on the plan, on the map. First of all, we talk about redevelopment sites in our document. We've got 3 redevelopment sites. I think we should identify them on the master plan with some form of designation, RD1 or RD2, or RD3, so that, we can let the public know what, we've got some redevelopment sites that we're interested in pursuing. The one on Baldwin and Judah, just whether it's a circle around that area that says redevelopment site number 1. And then we've got redevelopment site 2, which is the Eagle Valley landfill. I'd just like to make a comment on that one. Eagle has developed a renewable energy zoning database, which is available to all communities. It's the first compilation of all renewable energy ordinances across the state and the first database of its kind. And they reference that in 2020, when the database was launched, over half of Michigan's more than 1,800 municipalities have considered renewable energy in their zoning ordinances. Now the numbers are higher, especially for solar. So I think, we can add that into our implementation strategy in terms of energy resource. Enough said on that one. And then the third area was Brown Road. And again, if we can identify that as redevelopment site so that, again, they're being pointed out as areas of interest that we are looking at for redevelopment. I think we could also identify the 4 areas of our 15-minute neighborhoods. Again, I think we can get that message out to the public that, we're looking at areas for these types of things if we're serious about them. Identify them so that when a developer comes in, you can identify that as an area of interest. The last thing was the one I mentioned earlier, was the corner of Clarkston and Joslin, where a property owner indicated an interest in showing that as multiple family. I think there's some logic to that. It's across the street from 2 public or semi-public land uses, a non-conforming development to the east, and a library to the north. So I think it has some, I think it just makes sense, rather than to show it now if we can. I'll shut up.
So I do have a question for Don. So when you say area of interest, in regard to Eagle Valley, I mean, there's another 20 years on that.
Yeah, I know.
So I mean, would you, and you mentioned the solar, the growth in solar.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about working with Eagle Valley to begin establishing a solar farm
If the
on the property?
opportunity, if the opportunity presents itself, sure. I don't think that's our role as much as it is the township board's role.
Oh, sure, I'm just,
But yeah, I think it would be a good time to broach it.
It's been a popular reuse.
Perfect time for.
I mean, I
for-
guess, to me, when you look at 20 years out, we're gonna have at least hopefully, 2 or 3 master plans before
Yeah.
that place even
4.
closes.
But
Hopefully, and
we've
that's-
identified it in this master plan as redevelopment site.
Right.
And so I think we should at least continue that on the plan as a redevelopment site. It may take 20 years, you're right. Maybe not.
Rod, go ahead.
And I have a question about your comment on the northwest corner of Jocelyn and
Clarkston.
Is the request for multiple family, would that be the low or the medium density? Is that what is your recommendation? Are you suggesting one or the other?
Probably low at this point.
Yeah, that seems to make sense, okay.
My comment on that one is, I understand the feasibility of it, that it's possible. I'm struggling with that kind of Clarkston corridor, and we've obviously talked about it, just this most recent PUD, right? That was closer to 24, and is it in the right location? The northwest corner there is, some of our lowest density single family right now. So I right now wouldn't be in favor of that, to be honest with you, of that location, Joslyn and Clarkston Road. It seems to be a big kind of jump, and I don't see, a school is one thing, but it relates to me more of like a community or neighborhood function versus, a higher density multifamily. We have that along Baldwin, we have it along 24, so I don't know if I would be in huge favor of it traveling up north of Clarkston on Joslyn. This is my perspective.
I agree. Too far north.
It wouldn't fit there, just like, I don't see that it would.
They're big parcels, but there's a lot of those, long, narrow lots, similar to what got brought up in public comment in our workshop.
Would we expect a single-family subdivision to go in there?
Potentially. My whole thing would be is, you have those larger acreage lots there, so if you jump to multifamily, it's a different housing type, and it's a different, so I think, for me, it goes back to circling in some of these other comments of the master plan and talking about other solutions of multifamily or missing middle that still would maybe meet some of those density requirements, but not be multifamily. Bungalows or detached condo type of a thing. And I think that, to me, still lends well to, it could be a good core development, but not a, large apartment complex or, 20 dwelling units per acre or something like that.
Oh, on the east side, you have single-family high density. Is that an option to put that on the west side then, if you think needs higher density than what's currently designated? Have the yellow go over to the northwest corner, like it is in the northeast corner?
right now on the east side, what are those, what's that name, what are those
So
zoned as, those?
Single family.
Single family.
Commercial on the corner.
We have high density on the northeast corner.
Park is right here.
We
Yeah, but
have,
that's an
Here,
industrial
over
use.
here. Cemetery,
It's right here,
and then, yeah, there's that
homes there.
Daycare center.
right.
Get it,
early
right
childhood
here, right here on
education,
the map.
school. That's the other thing too, is there's a school right there as well. And we have talked before about being concerned about traffic when there's a school nearby. There are 2 schools nearby. My other question about that too is like we've seen on other developments, you know, are there wetlands there that they can't build on? Like, are we gonna get
Well,
request for a?
What's the history of that piece of property? Is it, because it looks pretty good location. I mean, what? Do we
Well-
know anything about that?
I mean, my comment would be is strictly looking at zoning, before you say, is there wetlands, is there not, is there all these things, is, you know, what uses are we promoting in that quadrant? You know, and is it compatible with the other future land uses that we have there? To me, it seems like, you know, that's one of the corners that we identify, you know, from that to the northwest is our least dense area in the township. So we got a lot of density along some of those major corridors, and that's where, if anything, you know, if there is to be future creep along some of those corridors, you know, I would want that to occur closer to 24, in my perspective.
Would you go along with single-family high density?
I mean, obviously, it's further to the west on Clarkston Road now. I mean, I guess my thing is when we went zone by zone on that, you know, other than the one parcel and the one public comment, you know, so the one comment that we got here tonight is driving the conversation. Right, so what about the next parcel? What about the one next to that? So that's where I struggle is like, what is best for that little corner right there without getting into all the details of what could it be when we get into site plan approval? So, to me, it seems like, especially with trying to promote recreation to the south in that area, it seems like recreation to a lower density is more favorable than taking a steep jump, at least at this point.
I'm not gonna die the cross.
No, I know, and I'm not trying to say, you know, one way or the other. Obviously, you know, we're on 2 sides of the fence with it. I just,
And I don't want to agree with the chair, but I do.
I mean, the whole area is surrounded by, not the whole area, but if you look on the map, there's single-family homes. And I think that the residents in that area probably expect at some point in time that piece of property will be developed.
right.
And if you put in a nice, single-family home development of some sort, that would be very palatable compared to an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess there's been some thoughts between keep it as it is, multifamily or high density. Got some thoughts, I guess, kind of get some conclusions here, Mrs. Gingell.
I would prefer to keep it as is.
Okay, Mr. Walker,
I agree.
Mr. St. Henry,
Yes.
which means keep it as is? Okay, thank you. I would vote to keep it the same. Mr. Gross.
No,
And so you're looking for, I guess there's 3 options. So you're looking to do high density or multifamily?
no, I would go with high density, single family.
Okay. Kim?
I would leave it, just because of, I'm just looking at the map right now. I would leave it, with all that, single-family homes there.
Bracken?
I would be agreeable to single-family, high-density.
So we have 2 votes for single-family high density and the remainder for remaining the same. So I think majority rules on remaining the same. But good discussion for all intents and purposes.
Perhaps for a later day.
Yes, and again, I'm not, that's what I'm saying, like,
Change
think
that mine
some of
to a
these-
single-family high density. 'Cause I think that's realistic.
Well, that's why we're just kind of tallying majority vote.
But I think
So
you
you
counted
said-
me, I said that, yes.
Okay, so if you're,
I want
that takes it,
single-family high density.
okay, that still
But
takes
I know
majority.
it doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah, single-family low density is majority
It's
vote.
the principle of the thing, Joe.
Yes.
Okay. All right, good thoughts. That location stays the same. Let's talk, there was one other location too that got brought up in comment, if we want to discuss it or not, if anyone wants to bring forth. It was, what was it, believe it was Scripps and Lapeer? Because it's,
Right, northwest corner.
yep, medium, low density. I mean, and that to me seems like it fits in that area. I understand it's a smaller parcel, but I think that's.
It actually is recommended what they want, which one of their options is multiple family, and that's
Okay.
what the master plan calls it out for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I was mixing the two letters then. What about thoughts on adding, I would like some feedback from Rod about adding hamlets or future redevelopment areas to the master plan. Thoughts on that, or is that a parallel map, or what is that? What's the best way to achieve some of that?
I think as long as it's done with just a general circle, indicating this is what it is, and then maybe in the legend, it would be simple, and then say, see page blank for more information. As long as it doesn't clutter the map, I don't have an objection to doing that.
Any objection to kind of cross-referencing information on the master plan map?
As long as it's clear.
Okay, I think,
You're gonna change your mind again?
Do you mean for both the redevelopment zones and the hamlets? So we're putting all of that on there as well?
Right. The hamlets, I feel that that's kind of a slam dunk. The redevelopment sites, I have less of a,
yeah. I'm all for the hamlets. The redevelopment zones I question in the sense of, is it bringing too much attention to certain uses or not?
yeah, because we have a whole section on that where people could find information on those redevelopment sites. I'm not sure if it has to be on the map. I think that's,
But this is going to be part of our RRC,
yes.
and that's showing
But
3 sites.
so,
And one of them is in process already. The second one is years away. And the third one is up for grabs.
so I guess here would be my comment with that one. Shocker, I have a comment. Is there's others, right? So what's the weight to those 3? Because I think there would be,
Because we identified them.
and do we, so,
Good point.
Then let's not
They are called
identify
out in
them.
another section.
I understand. I'm just saying there's other, there are examples as redevelopment sites, right? So to me, there's others like entering into the village, right? Like Jacobson's site. I think there's, what about, the intersection of Clarkston and Baldwin Road? Is there anything more at Indianwood and Baldwin Road? Like those were other areas that.
Certainly there are.
So, I mean, I'm just saying the list could go on of, I don't see those 3 examples as the only ones, or
They're
the
not.
only way.
They're not, but they are the only ones that we've identified in the plan as part of ones that we want to focus on.
You could call those priority redevelopment areas, something like that.
All right, I'm open to it.
I don't remember exactly what the redevelopment verbiage says for the Eagle Valley, but I think that in the introduction of that section, we should point out and say that while we do not, Eagle Valley is going to be open as a landfill for so many years, whatever that is, just so people don't think that like, oh, it must be closing soon.
No, it does. It's pretty clear about that. There's a long-range vision and the potential for, and there's a picture of, it's on page 110, there's a picture of a solar farm from another community where the exact same thing has happened, where a landfill was converted to a solar farm, and it's shown that this is going to be a long-term potential for this site. It's not intended to happen overnight.
Okay, I mean, I'm open to putting it on there. I just want to make sure it's clear that that's not, be clear that that's not the only opportunity of a development site, if we do. You know, and that we're not just trying to single those out as the top three.
We kind of are.
Well, we are, but that's what I'm saying.
Priority.
They are a
Call them
priority,
priorities,
right? But
Whatever, yeah,
Or you could just call them identified redevelopment sites if you want to be less.
yeah.
I would be more favorable to that. I mean, I just, and I don't want to be the, sole voice, but I don't want to have someone come in and go, well, now my property's worth triple, or whatever it would be. Right? Because it's just saying, the point of the redevelopment sites is like, this could be a huge impact for the community. And I think there's other locations beyond those three, just rattling off a few previously, that could make a huge impact. So, and if we're gonna say, here's a priority, then we should expand that list and say, well, let's look at the 15 that could exist in the community.
Or don't identify any of them.
True.
The RRC is going to want you to have 3.
Oh, is that
So
what
you
it
need to have 3 if you're going
Is that what
to
it
follow that
That
path.
way, there's, okay.
is? Okay, well,
I mean, do we have to put it on the future land use map? Can we just,
You do not have to.
does it have to be, like?
In fact, I've done multiple plans for RRC communities, and none of them put it on the actual future land use map, but it's in the plan, just like yours
That's-
is.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's your choice, your plan.
Okay,
I'm just offering suggestions.
well, we always appreciate it.
there's no bad ideas in
No.
this brainstorming session.
So I guess that with all the discussion, let's get a general consensus. So I didn't hear any objections to the hamlets being provided on the master plan, correct? Any objections?
15-minute neighborhood hubs, yeah.
Neighborhood hubs, yep. So let's get just a brief kind of tally on showing development sites on the future land use map. So, yes, as in provide them, no, as in don't put them on the future land use map, and you see it as it is. So I'll start on this end, Ms. Bracken.
No.
Mrs. Urbanowski.
No.
Mr. Gross.
Sure.
All right. I vote no. Mr. St. Henry.
No.
Mr.
Yes.
Walker.
No.
All right, so that would be 2 yeses and 5 noes, so majority rules of no. So sorry, Mr. Gross, that you were once again vetoed, but we, like I said, we appreciate your discussion, absolutely, so.
I already got one guy beat.
All right, additional comments, discussion points on the future land use map.
Yeah, I just.
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay, so about a year ago, maybe it was a little longer, we had a developer come in, had a piece of property at Scripps in Stadium in 24 to propose, a commercial development in the front of the piece of property and in a medium-sized neighborhood on the back end of the property, backing right up to the high school property. Okay? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but, at one point that was zoned multi-resident development, and the developer came in and said, well, actually, we're lowering the density to a neighborhood, so you should be happy with that. With not taking any consideration into the traffic patterns in the school complex area. And there were real concerns about that, and we're all very familiar with what goes on there. Now, that was all part of the future land use map, and some folks sat back and says, well, it's on our future land use map, and we should consider that. And then I think at least one other person said, well, maybe when we do the master plan, we take a look at the future land use map and identify areas within the township that may have changed over the last 10, 20 years that the future land use map needs to reflect. We need to make changes because it doesn't make sense there, or those are much more challenging pieces of property now than maybe they were when that was originally discussed. Because 25, 30 years ago, the high school wasn't there. You didn't have the traffic patterns on Stadium Drive. But a lot has changed since then. So are there any pieces, and now, that's done, we know that that development is in play and so forth. But are there any other pieces of property identified on this map, or any areas, that what we know in terms of what's there now should be changed? Because if we follow this plan, we may run into some issues again, or not be as comfortable with the decisions being made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but.
Because this is the time to make those changes, if I'm not mistaken. I know that's extra work, but I mean, that's a perfect example of an area that was, you know, the best intentions, but in reality, it doesn't play out that way. Is there any other places on this map that we need to take a hard look at?
Are there areas that you're referring to other than the one on Stadium Drive?
I would have to take a look at it and think about it, maybe as a group, or if anybody else has any issues, I'm opening this up to everybody.
I mean, in reality, there's probably a dozen places like that if we thought about it and, but I mean, is that something
like-
that we can, I mean,
Like for example, Lapeer Road in Indianwood, okay? With all the development on Indianwood and west on Indianwood over the last 25 years, and then all of a sudden they want to redevelop the corner. You know, we know that may not, that may not have been a great idea. Now, granted, it was a consent judgment, and we don't need to go into that, but what we know now versus what people knew then when they kept that zoning, and even the last iteration of the master plan, they kept the zoning the same way. That's just another example of in hindsight, maybe didn't work out. Are places that we can anticipate?
I mean, I do know that, obviously, you know, can we predict everything? No. I do know that Rod and team, you know, we walked square by square around this township and looked, and then we, you know, and Tammy and team brought forth, you know, all the information that we had, and we, you know, there was a lot of those examples we looked at, you know, in a case-by-case basis. Now, did we pick up all of them? You know, I'm not sure, you know, I mean, obviously, I've looked at this many times, so if there's other areas as a, you know, point of discussion, I'm all ears. You know, because I do want this to be reflective of what this needs to be, you know, for the next phase of the master plan. But I'm not exclusively thinking of uses that you know, we have obviously had a couple here tonight, but of other areas that are in the wrong per se, you know, of what we have versus, and because we did go through and update a lot to say, this is a little more realistic with, especially with our change in thinking process of densities too.
And I remember the conversation we had in the other building where you broke it down by zone and we looked at each one. I'm just bringing it up before we finalize this, and we're looking at the updated future land use plan as a whole now. Just one more chance to think about it. Are there any areas that really we should take a second look at? That's all I'm saying. And I'm not trying to add more work. I just want to make sure that we, in hindsight, we don't have some misgivings down the road, whether it's us or another planning commission. That's all.
And I feel like that's why we tried to go through that section by section, to give you the chance to focus on smaller areas. Doesn't mean you missed one, you know, you could have, but nothing comes to my mind, but yeah, this would be the time to think about it, absolutely.
Go ahead, Donnie, if you want to state your name and address for the record.
Donnie Steele, 262 Kirks Way. Thank you for your service and doing this. This is so tedious. So how about the corner of Clarkston and 24 where that shop is half underwater on Buckhorn? That's just the first one that came to my head. What's that one zone?
That is commercial, general commercial.
That would be a perfect one that's very similar to what you pointed out on Indianwood, where they took that little 900 square foot building and made it into a
Blow it up.
9,000 square foot building, so, yeah, that one. I don't know what you guys think with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, just as, did you want to say something first?
You hit,
Okay, I was going to say also, just to bring it up, because it's a point of discussion for tonight. As you know, we've talked about this, the next step in this process is for you to make a recommendation that the draft go to the township board so they can vote to release it to get comments. Just keep in mind that when that happens, that doesn't mean you've finalized the document, okay? So I realize you're a little hesitant, but keep in mind, you still have time to review it and make changes. There will be a 63-day review period once the township board votes to release it. You will have time to think about what you've recommended to this date, and you could potentially make changes before you adopt the plan. So I just don't want you to feel like you have all the pressure to do everything right now, but I think you are going to have to make a decision as to whether or not you feel like you want to have another draft back to see it again before you make that vote, or do you want to make the vote contingent on those changes we're talking about tonight being made and then sent forward? So I'm just throwing that out for you to think about as you continue on with your discussion.
Thank you. And that's a good clarification point, because I knew there was the review period, but if there was a discussion point that occurred, that it couldn't be modified or something couldn't get tweaked. So that is helpful. I think for me, this is a very comprehensive draft, and I feel that we have went through this very thoroughly and discussed a lot of topics, and we've worked on weak points. And yes, could there be a couple other areas where we need some input or some low-hanging fruit that we missed? Yes. But for me, I'm comfortable with what we've discussed to date, and especially with the thorough review. Now, whether people are comfortable with that to see another draft or not, I'll leave that for additional discussion, so.
can I, before we go that direction?
Sorry.
Before we go that direction, I
Yep.
just had two questions, and I think I might have glazed over on one. The corner of Lapeer and Scripps. I heard you say multifamily, but that's not what they requested. So that's where I think I glazed over. You think what we have is accurate? Because that's not what the request was for.
They were
commercial.
talking about, so I didn't pull up the email exactly because I have everything on the screens here.
Still up here.
But they had said something feasible, the property is narrow, it is master planned for multifamily. I think they're asking for a zoning that was feasible, correct?
Well,
They're,
they did say, I'm sorry, I may have
Oh, no, they want it-
misinterpreted.
They want it-
They
they
do
want
say
commercial.
commercial in
They
here.
want
want it
commercial because they're grandfathered in. There's, okay.
they're grandfathered for that exact
Exact.
use.
That use.
And because it's not a conforming use, you can't add on, you can't do a different commercial use. So they're saying they're trying to market it, it's unusually shaped, and it's has been for years commercial, and so their request was commercial.
And just to that point also, though, remember, we're talking about potential changes to the multiple family district to make it easier to build on some more smaller and challenging parcels. So just throwing that out as something for you to think about.
I would be comfortable with the next round of changes, passing this on for review to the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, most of the stuff right now is
We're fine-tuning it.
wordsmith, yeah.
I had some things that I had put into my notes that they changed that really, I didn't think were up for much discussion, but I would like to say thank you very much for taking care of those. I'll give a couple examples of what I put in there and why I would feel comfortable with moving forward with conditional, upon the changes. But like in general, I asked for more information about the fire department and our ALS stuff, and you put more pictures of the fire stations and things like that in there. I appreciated that. There was no mention of Orion Neighborhood Television, which is a community, facility, and it was put in there, so thank you for that. Those kinds of things were what I noticed. And I'm happy with what was put in there, so I appreciate that very much. So I would be comfortable with, we've discussed a lot, and there's a lot of things that need to be.
Mr. Bracken?
I guess I would be comfortable with one or the other, either seeing another version or seeing all the notes that everybody submitted that are gonna be changed.
Just to be clear, you would ultimately see the version that's going to the township board, okay? So you would see that version.
We could
And
adjust
then you could later adjust it if you felt like you needed to. At the time that you have the adoption, you could amend it and make those changes, so, yes.
My point's even before it goes to the board, one or the other. Because like Joe said, he's gonna submit 2 pages of notes. God knows what's in those. I'd like to see those notes or the changes that are made as a result of those notes.
Yeah, because just keep in mind, if the draft comes back to you again, you have 1 more month that you're pushing off adoption, just letting you know. But yes, we could prepare a summary list of changes that are being made in the next draft. We would like to have that back to you at the same time it gets forwarded, if you choose to vote that way, yes.
So let me ask, even though we don't have a workshop, is it possible that before our next meeting, that at least a summary of those changes are submitted and that the formal motion could be there? Does that help be a good compromise?
Or a workshop before the next one. Just throwing out ideas.
Yep. I mean, I think.
It only gives me about a week if.
Understood. I guess, for me, I understand, you're trying to say, like, is there major influence? And I think we're down to this point of like, hey, let's make sure we, wordsmith some stuff. But it could change, right? So I think we got to make the decision that we're comfortable as it sits right now, and knowing that we're still going to have the opportunity to further discuss it. Now, is it a 180? Probably not, but could there be drastic changes? Yes, because that's what the 63-day period is for. So, if we think we're completely missing the point or completely missing a topic, I would want to get that in tonight's discussion. If it's minor tweaks, to me, it seems like we could potentially move forward with the amendment based on the discussion point. But if there's stuff people haven't looked at, I mean, that was kind of what we were talking about for the last 30, 45 days here. Go ahead.
Question I have, and I've been through one master plan prior to this, and I don't remember what we did. When we send it to the board, ask them to release it, I assume, the board will get it a week ahead of time, and they'll determine whether to release it. Is there a comfort, or does Kim, as the board rep, have a comfort explaining to them, or is there anything in there that would make anyone uncomfortable? I guess that's a question that I have. Kim, you will be sitting at the meeting, and I don't know, do you come and present it? What happens?
Not typically at the release date.
Not at the release date.
No, typically.
So if it's coming with a motion to send it to the board, ask them to release it, Kim, you're sitting there with your board, your trustees and the rest of the board. You have a comfort level that this is a document that we've got this close.
Honestly, I would prefer that whatever we are putting in front of the board is what we want, that we've seen it, and we all agree that that's the thing that we're putting there, not a promise of something. Does that make sense? I'd like to see.
So I guess my question would be is what open topics are we still looking to discuss? What else is there that's on, I mean, I'm not trying to go verbatim word for word, but that's, as a forum here, right? I mean, tweaking grammar and rewording some stuff, I would empower our consultants for. To me, are we missing the big picture, right? Because that feels like where we're at, right? We're submitting for our 50% review or 75% review, knowing we still got another 25% to go.
Let's see, it's 10 after 8, so we got a little bit of time.
We do.
Yeah, so are you open for any further discussion right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now my fellow commissioners may disagree with me, but I'm bringing it up. This is just for discussion. I think that we put too, in the economic development section of this plan, I think we put too much emphasis on the cannabis industry. I mean, we know for a fact that it's here. We have embraced it. We have 3 or 4 major grow facilities. We're diving into retail facilities. I think the community has mixed feelings about it, but it's happening, it's here. I think we're all comfortable with where we're at right now as a community in the cannabis industry. I just think that we continue to put a lot of emphasis on it and I'm not saying you eliminate it completely from the economic development section of the plan. I just think that it is too prominent. I think that we may perhaps send the wrong message to the community about our reliance on it and in the focus, when in reality, when it comes to economic development between small and mid-sized businesses, entrepreneurship, and major corporate development, major facilities, I think, long-term, that's what's going to drive this community. I just think we should downplay the cannabis industry somewhat.
Are you on strategy 3 where it's listed
Yeah,
there?
what,
Well, where it's listed, and then I think we also have it highlighted in key, on the screen, if you, just,
Listed.
I'm not making this up, I read it in multiple places, but let's go to the economic development section.
Yeah, on strategy 3, it's just one of 7 items, that's the last one listed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it sticks out like a sore thumb, I'm just very sensitive to it, I don't,
oh, sorry. This, okay, all right.
I'm wondering if there's a way that we can obviously include it without calling it out as a growth industry for our community. I think it sends the wrong message.
So,
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
so the other thing, I mean, if not privy to cannabis, right? One of the other terms and reference of that is just indoor agriculture, which is the other emerging industry out of this. I mean, it's not trying to skirt the topic or to not say what it is, but it is technology that's coming about to essentially create false hybrid, environments for things to grow wherever. So, I mean, I hear you on cannabis because it's still a very hot topic. I don't have a huge reservation of putting it in there, but you could obviously point towards growth industries, and that would be one of them, is indoor agriculture, not just strictly cannabis
Well,
growth.
then maybe that is exactly how we word it. Listen, this is a conservative community. There's mixed feelings about
If you want to make that change, that's fine. I mean, just, cannabis appears twice. There's two spots. I just did a word search. If you want us to change that to indoor agriculture, that's fine.
I mean, we talk about it all the time. That's how we're paying for the place that we're sitting in. It's literally how we're paying for this building.
Where else?
And I understand
Sorry.
exactly what you're saying, because and I'll be perfectly honest with you, the cannabis stuff for me personally has been difficult, just because of previous things that I've done in my work life. It's not my favorite thing, but I understand that it is an emerging industry, and it's, I've been very pleased with the people that have been in here, but how much more growth potential do we have for that in particular? Because, I don't know. I mean, what's our cap on it? I don't even know.
Where else does it appear, Rod? I just want to kind of pull it up.
Yeah, it appears,
I don't mind if it says, I'm
it
just.
appears in strategy 5, in the first paragraph.
What page?
That is page 104. So it appears twice on page 104. It's at the
Okay.
bottom of the first, bottom of strategy
Cannabis
3,
production.
and then cannabis productions in number 5. And that's the only 2 places where the word
Guys,
cannabis.
I'm not denying the fact that it's here and it's a growing interest. I'm just saying that from an optics perspective, perhaps we can not let it stand out so much. That's all I'm saying.
That's a choice, yeah, absolutely.
So I guess the proposal of, we can either keep it as it sits, it can be removed, or it could be transitioned to indoor agriculture. You know, or there is a terminology out there that is.
Is that going to be recognizable to potential
Yeah.
developers? Okay.
Yeah, it is terminology that's being utilized. I mean, for example, ourselves and our firm, there's ways that, you know, where cannabis is a little more taboo, right? And it's just more towards that as an industry. And yes, it happens to be cannabis right now, but with all the climate change and all the other stuff that's going on in this world, that is the next step, because we're designing a grow facility that you can put anything in there. So, I mean, I'm not trying to just skirt the topic, I'm being honest, you know, of where that segment could go after this, because there are plenty of projections to say, well, how much is too much, or how much until you kind of reach that cap point, or there's gonna be a lot of other economic factors that we've seen in other states and communities that, you know, we're seeing here. So I think it's okay to acknowledge, you know, market segment without, you know, being too taboo about it.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Mr. Walker.
I think that's being disingenuous. I think we are here to serve the public. We are here for the citizens of Orion Township, and for us to discuss misleading them, I think is a terrible thing. I'm not saying promote it, put it on the billboard sign, but to intentionally mislead, which I think changing that to what we're suggesting would be intentionally misleading the citizens of Orion Township. And I would not vote for such a thing.
Well, I mean, one thing we could do is eliminate, under the strategy one, just eliminate it from there. I mean, that's just a sentence. It's not necessarily a summary of anything under the foster entrepreneurship. That way, it's only listed once under strategy 3.
Growth industry.
Tell me what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe saying indoor agriculture is misleading, in my personal sense. So that's just my opinion. So I will say this, let's have a tally of understanding. So there's 3 options of remain the same, change to indoor agriculture, or strike it completely. So let's just get,
Kind of like your option.
I'm sorry.
I like the option that he just mentioned.
Just
Keep it
remove
in.
it.
No, leave
Delete
it,
one of the
leave it
two.
as a bullet point
under
under
3.
3. I'm sorry, I'm talking over you.
You're fine.
It's your idea.
No, go ahead.
But remove it under strategy 5.
I said the opposite.
No, I said keep it under strategy 3, but remove it under strategy 5 under entrepreneurship.
I mean, again, for me, it's what we've been, we just had 2 on the agenda tonight. I mean,
Yeah, but those are existing facilities.
There's going to be additional.
But it's still
Those are brand new.
labor forcing, it's still
They're part of the
developing.
Premier Drive
They're
development.
in that complex.
Yes. I get their individual licenses, but they're within an existing complex.
They're in Liberty Tech.
Yes. Premier Drive.
Premier, yeah.
Wasn't it Premier?
It's
Anyway,
Premier, yeah.
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yes,
where exactly. but
yes,
it's-
I'm sorry, Premier.
You don't think there's going to be more, Joe?
You know, I don't know if there's gonna be more or not, to be quite honest with you. But this is a very conservative community. And there's a lot of back and forth. This community is not all in on this stuff. We are insiders. And we know that this is a industry that the township has targeted, and we've been successful. I just don't know if we need to throw it in the face of the public. I'm not saying that you strike it completely or anything like that, but when you throw it in the face of the public, it becomes, again, a priority, a high priority. You're listing it here, and there's these 7.
I think to Kim's point, it already is.
I'm going to admit
I
something.
mean, I'm gonna tell you right now, if we start opening up more and more grow facilities, I'm gonna have an issue with that.
When
I don't want Orion Township to be known for that.
When I started on the planning commission, I did some research and probably did 5 pages of notes for that as well. But I went to each voting district and I looked to see what percentage of people voted for recreational versus who voted against. And our township was pretty even with the state. I mean, we were like neck and neck with the way everybody in the state voted. There was only one district that was, just barely a no, and that was what my district actually at Walden. So that's to say 51 point something% of people in Orion voted yes.
For recreational
Recreation.
marijuana sales.
Correct.
Yeah, that's different than becoming known as the grow capital of the state of Michigan or in the Midwest.
Yeah, but we're not talking about it being the only subject here. We're singling that one out as that's our creme de la creme. It's item number 7.
In my opinion,
Well, I
frankly,
can tell you right now that cannabis grow and production industry has got a hell of a lot more potential, excuse my language, a lot more potential than electric bikes and electric scooters. I mean, if you're putting that in order of what we think is going to be the major growth industries and where we should focus our attention.
But we're not. We're just listing them. So just because one is a growth segment right now and the other isn't so much so, that's not what we're trying to do here in this list.
if I might, so kind of building off what Kim said, the reason we're sitting here is because of the cannabis industry that paid for this building. I've sat through, over the last 15 years, probably 10 to 12 meetings with private investors trying to put some sort of sports training center, hockey rink, or something in Orion Township. Never has that gotten off the ground at any point in time, because from a business standpoint, private economic standpoint, no one could make it profitable, all right? If this, and it would be explained to the citizens of Orion, if this cannabis growth and production that goes on in here, like this building, could fund a sports facility for my future grandchildren to work out in, or an ice rink for them to play in, I think their minds would change drastically, as opposed to just thinking of it like this. So if we focus on it like that, as what it would provide to the community in other things, in the taxes and so forth, and economic impact it will have on the community, I think the minds will change.
It's a completely different discussion, and that may have some merit. But as it stands now in this community, you know, there are mixed feelings about large grow facilities, even though a lot of people don't know about them until they drive by them, because they, despite their best efforts, there are significant odors, and they have mixed feelings about them. Listen, I'm just saying, when you call it out as a growth industry, that gives it some weight. And that may rub some people the wrong way, that you're putting it out there right in front of them, as if you're going to go after even more. And I don't think we've actually approached it quite like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. They've come to us. We've got the ordinance in place.
I mean, isn't not listing it just as disingenuous
I don't know. I'm not
as
saying,
changing the language?
I'm not saying to take it out of everything. I'm just saying I can think of a lot more growth industries that we should be chasing other than, oh, whatever. I'm getting off point, and I apologize. Listen, this is just my feeling, and if the group disagrees, so be it. My feelings won't be hurt. We're talking this out as a group.
Okay, so with that said, let's get some conclusion here on including cannabis in the master plan. Currently, it's iterated in a couple of sections here on page 104. So let's just do a little tally of including or removing the verbiage, and then we can discuss it based on that tally. So,
Now, hold on a second, though. I'm not saying remove it completely. Like, for example, if you took it off of strategy 3 is number 7, but you kept it over here under entrepreneurship strategy 5, it's still referenced.
I guess with the discussion that we just had, I
And
feel
this-
like we're talking about it, you're gonna include it, and it's going to upset people. So why, if it's going to upset people, would you include it anywhere? So my whole thing is,
Okay.
it's acknowledging factors where we're at right now, in my perspective. And I think the master plan is bringing forth a lot of points of contention and different opinions, right? We're here, and this is one of those things where it's here, it's happening, it is a growth segment, so why would we pretend it doesn't exist? No different
Okay.
than master plan on corners, on what should it be zoned, or what could it be, or what is a redevelopment area or not.
Okay.
But I would like to get a conclusion, though, of, so I guess the question would be is include, disinclude, or modify? So if we could get a tally on that, then I think that would be helpful to the discussion. So, myself, I say we leave it as is. Mr. Gross?
Leave it as is.
Kim?
I say, I would leave it as is, but if other people are amenable to taking it out of under foster entrepreneurship, because I'm not really sure that doesn't work there for me.
Okay,
So is that a modify?
Modify.
okay. Vote for modify. Mr. Bracken?
Modify,
And your modification would be,
same as Kim.
okay. Mr. St. Henry?
Modify.
And it would be the same as discussed, remove out of item 5.
If that's what the
That's
group
it,
wants.
okay. So, Mr. Walker?
Leave as is.
Mrs. Skindle?
I would go with the modify, Kim's modify.
It's modify.
So we have 3 for modify with 5M. So I will say this, we had,
4 for modify.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, we did have 4 for modify. I'm sorry, I have, that's why Ms. Gerling does this usually. And I would go either way with that, of the modify with 5M. So 5M, majority rules of let's remove it from fostering entrepreneurship, and we will leave it with item number 7 under strategy 3. Okay. Other points of discussion within the master plan as it sits right now. Go ahead, Kim, that's what we're here
I
for.
just have one.
Nope,
We're still under the same, it's going to be on both page 108 and 112. How do we feel about including these drawings?
the sketches. Do you have a reason why we wouldn't? What's your reservation, I guess, would be my ask.
Well, first, it's sort of, this one is difficult to see.
I don't
To
like
be
it.
honest with you. I mean, we saw it as a bit in big format, and it was great to see that, but does this look like,
Just
Very
density.
dense.
it looks very dense, but it's also, does this look like, hey, is anybody out there gonna do this for it? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure how to explain. It's very specific, and it's very detailed, and it's hard to see. And then the other one,
If I could make a comment, I think one of the advantages of doing something like this is it helps your economic development folks, Gary in particular, to shop this around and say, hey, this is something the township's interested in. This is a redevelopment that will serve the village center area, and the township is embracing this. And I think that can be helpful to have a concept. Doesn't mean this is what's going to get approved, but it's a concept of having some type of flex along the roadway and some type of residential that steps down as you move to the east. And I do think it's helpful. I mean, you don't have to include it, but I think it's very helpful. And I think from an RRC perspective, they're gonna like to see it too, just to throw that one in as well.
Could it be a bubble diagram?
You could.
Yeah, I mean, one of my suggestions, I don't mind the graphic as it sits, I understand your concern. You could easily maybe zoom in on this and make it a little more diagrammatic, or, just reiterating that there's the main thoroughfare, a buffer, the cottage plans as it moves away, heavy density retail, townhomes, then cottages of some sort. So, not to create extra work, but obviously, just I think pointing out those, like, the bigger picture here isn't so much about the whole site, but rather those transition areas. So, maybe if we zoom in on the Judah / Baldwin, area, like, maybe grab the first kind of handful, like just zoom into the intersection and understand, that kind of transition maybe.
I just don't want people to look at it and say, they're gonna build this.
Right, I don't want someone to look at it and say, I live right there,
Yeah.
and they're putting this on top of me. And
Do
they
you
don't
want to
understand the
convert it to a bubble
process.
diagram?
Yeah, something diagrammatic. It's a concept and sketch, and maybe there's some arrows and transitions or that understand the layer of the step down.
Okay.
We have a hard enough time of people thinking that conditional rezone is a done deal. Let alone putting something like this in.
All right, additional thoughts, additional areas we want to consider.
I have to find a new page number.
Sorry, I never got my second comment out. You guys moved on.
No,
We're not going to at all discuss the public comment from I don't think we talked about his area. I mean, he made his public comment, we said we'd discuss it at our 7 o'clock, and I
Yep,
don't
zoning
know
map.
if you did.
So we were talking, he had brought up the
Gregory Road.
Gregory Road.
So perhaps that's a good example of what we were talking about earlier.
What
On the
page?
future land use map, it still may be zoned suburban estates or whatever, but in reality, we know that that's not feasible. And perhaps we didn't make the change back, a month or two ago when we looked at the individual sections, but
Well,
maybe it makes sense now to make sure that that's addressed.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be this here. No, yeah, no, it's gonna be here.
He's on the north side of the street.
This is, so this is what he's.
so Rod, let me ask you, with our reconsidering density designations, doesn't that change that discussion point or that concern?
His is here.
To some extent, from what I understand, he's still in the single-family low density.
We're talking about this little location right here, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, so he's in that, okay.
However, that has been modified to have a range that goes from .3 to .7 dwelling units per acre. So it could potentially provide for something with greater density than what his current zoning is, if the township chose to rezone the property. So yes, there is potential for more yield if the property were to be rezoned.
So to Jessica's point, is it a matter of just reiterating the process involved if he wants to pursue it? And I don't know if that belongs in the master plan or not, but.
Well, where my comment is stemming from is our master plan is redefining what each of those uses, because not all of them are exactly one for one between the proposed zoning and the future land use. They fit within that category. So if that's master plan low density, single family.
Go to page 149, you'll get the answer.
Thank you.
So if it's master plan, single-family, low density, that could be suburban farms or suburban estates.
Correct. And we've discussed what that means in density, and that would give us a groundwork potentially to modify that zoning
Right.
designation. So we already are talking about realizing that the suburban, we scaled everything back from 5 acre lots to, it was, I think it was more like 2.5 to 1 point something, or, so we've backed everything down, which lays out the groundwork to acknowledge some of those, which, to me, in my perspective, is what we want to see there, not necessarily okay, just because across the street, then we're gonna, jump this over here.
Okay, so he's got a process.
It's not so there is a process now, right? You could go and seek a variance, or you could, right now, the way it's laid out is it is potentially dividable. I don't know his parcel exactly, but there's minimum size requirements for his existing zoning. But what we're talking about is the master plan lays out the groundwork to say, suburban estate is no longer minimum lot size of 2 acres, but rather 1.5, which allows him to maybe get 3 sections out of his property other than 2 or 1.
Okay, so we're laying the groundwork for him to potentially move forward and be successful, recognizing, we're recognizing the change.
If we choose to proceed through with this vision and amending ordinances, yes. But, and that's without reviewing his specific case, that what he desires right now isn't fully possible.
And there's 20 other families there that are running into the same issue, up and down Gregory and Morgan Road. They can't divide their properties.
Majority of them, he said, were already divided. I've looked at the case. I mean, he came to me to divide it, and the biggest drawback is the minimum width of the parcel. Well, in order to take a bowling alley lot, per the land division ordinance, you have to have a private road. If it's serving one, it's got to be 30 feet wide, and that 30 feet can't count towards the width of the parcel. So if he's only at 165, and the current ordinance, based on his zoning, requires 165, he's got no way, without variances, to put in that private road and still meet the ordinance on the width. Where if what he had pointed out and said to me, and so I think I can reflect it, is he's saying, I'm completely surrounded by the darker yellow, which is single-family, high-density. I've got the PUD, both Gregory Meadows and cottages at Gregory, that were higher density. So we're kind of on our own little island. Everything around me is something that's higher density. It doesn't, even if you change this map, he's got to then come to the township and ask for a rezone.
Right.
And for an individual property owner to do that, that's quite an expense to do that.
But at least
It
he'd
just
have
reflects what he was trying to convey.
What was that?
But he could use this as, I don't know, an argument, reinforcement to make his point.
Yeah.
That, I mean, if we did put it single-family high density, that we all, at least by a majority vote, thought it would be okay.
Correct. The first thing that's looked at when you do a rezone, the same as a developer, even a single-family owner is going to go through the same thing. They're going to look at the future land use map.
So why
Is
would,
it- Sorry.
oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna clarify. So is he suburban estates or suburban farms right now?
I think he said he was suburban.
He said he was suburban estates.
So all I would say is what we have right now with some of the discussions that we had about realistic dwelling per acre conversations have laid the framework of considering more dwellings per acre in all of our residential zoning as a master plan vision, not as a ordinance adoption. If we increase one step further to high density, then that would obviously further strengthen the argument and also take it one step in additional to potentially more dwellings per acre in that area.
Are people opposed to that?
How many lots did you say are like that now?
I didn't count.
Handful?
I mean, he pointed out, if you look at them, but there's a number of them that were prior to our current ordinance. So it's really apples and oranges, what you're talking about. You really are. I mean, it's, even if you allowed him, you go small enough, then your width is gonna go small enough based on the zoning ordinance, and he's able to put in his private road. But you also open up the fact that as you increase the density, then is a developer gonna come in, buy all those lots, and end up with another cottages at Gregory?
Even though they're surrounded by cottages of Gregory already.
Right.
Exactly.
Which to me would be a reasonable, if I was a developer and I'm seeing 5 different cottages of Gregory around this piece of property, I would think this could be something similar.
Right, and rather,
But the problem is, these people, some of them can't sell the property because they can't split it up.
right, but if you're gonna have another Cottages of Gregory somewhere in Orion Township, why not put it right next to the other one?
That's my point, yes.
Okay, I thought you were against me here.
No, not at all. You know,
Most people are.
no, I'm not against you at all. I mean, that just to me, it seems logical.
Agreed.
I don't think I would change anything without hearing from other neighbors.
So, yeah,
Why not?
and
Then he,
to that point, I mean, I'm reserved on creating a platform for additional density in an area that we already fight that there's too much. So there are means for a solution in his circumstances right now. So my opinion would be is to keep it as it sits. But I would like, obviously everyone, it's just like all the other discussions we've had tonight.
Well, I mean, the devil's advocate position is then you're giving it to a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate corporation in Pulte, you're allowing him, but a local resident who's,
Well-
it's been there for how many years,
Can't do it.
can't do anything.
that was a consent judgment anyway.
And it would be
That
a
was
consent.
that wasn't
And
something
there's a
that-
possibility of it being a consent judgment again.
Yeah, but I mean, my point in that is that we were originally, this thing was no. This is not an appropriate thing for this area, we don't want this. And then, got the, dealt a hand.
It is what it is, right.
But you see what I'm saying, I mean, I wasn't on the, I wasn't, you guys were, like, what did you say? No, we don't recommend this, and then they said, we
Well,
didn't,
that was the actual original Gregory Meadows.
right, right.
If I remember right.
Yeah, so I mean, somebody agreed to it within Orion Township, if it was a consent judgment.
Well,
Yeah, we compromised. We had no
Right.
choice.
right.
I mean, some of this
You
detail.
always have a choice.
Some of this detailed conversation of, the specific case, to me, it seems like, why we go through this in a detailed sense is to get, what's the best fit in that area, and I don't feel like additional density is the best fit. Especially with considering one case.
So tell me, Scott, based on what the changes that we've made now to this chart,
Mhm.
to the suburban farms, suburban estates, for single-family low density, we're comfortable leaving it like that. If the gentleman comes back to the township and before the ZBA or whatever, he figures out the process, then you're saying that it would be taken up on a case-by-case basis and considered?
No, I'm saying to change everything in that district for one person, I don't think has the best interest in the master plan.
And you may be correct. My point is there a process for him to
Yes,
try
yes,
within this master
Yes.
plan as we structured it today? That's all I'm asking.
yes, yes.
Yeah, but his chances of success are less if we don't make the change.
No, not necessarily.
I mean, to me, if I'm sitting here and I see that this surrounding area has got all these newer neighborhoods and it's much higher density from a zoning perspective, I would be hard pressed not to let him do what he wants to do, or anybody in that area. If they go with the proper channels, but I guess that's not up to us. I just want to make sure that we're aligned with reality.
Should we vote on it, or?
Yeah, let's get a tally on this. So, we're talking about, I guess I pointed out the map previously, so, in support of changing or to remain the same, Mr. Bracken?
Yes means change?
Sure, yes means change.
Yes.
Okay. Kim?
No.
Mr. Gross?
No.
I vote no. Mr. St. Henry?
No.
Mr. Walker?
No.
Mrs. Gingell?
No.
Okay, that is 6-1. So no proposed change there is majority. Additional, yeah. Did you have any other
No,
areas you wanted
that
to?
was just, you guys hadn't addressed it. Thank you.
All right, additional areas to converse. Okay, so let's kind of wrap up our conversations then on some, so general discussion on, we've heard on possibilities of essentially bringing forth this draft recommendation to the township. Are we in support of that, of moving forward with the amendments as discussed tonight to publish, to recommend publishing of the draft by the township board? There's still an opportunity to make changes and justifications? Or do we want to see another draft in front of us before we make that recommendation? I'm comfortable with the conversations that we've had to move forward with the draft, but I'm all ears.
I concur.
Mr. Walker seconds that.
So it'll delay it a month if we ask for another, roughly a month if we ask for another.
Correct.
Unless we met at 6 o'clock next meeting.
We didn't know if it doesn't give enough time to publish.
I don't have the change.
Because I have to get it done in a week, so you have a week to review it. It's just, it's a tight timeframe.
If I can offer a suggestion.
Yep.
We have another meeting in 2 weeks. I would feel more comfortable at least having a formal resolution in front of us to adopt, to send on to the township board with, an explanation as to what we've done, what the date of the plan is, and what we would expect, as opposed to just saying, we're going to be giving it to the board.
Are you saying just a summary of changes?
No, not of the changes, just saying that there's a draft that has been prepared, and the commission has reviewed it over the last year. We have made some additional changes that are forthcoming, yada, yada, yada. So at least that we've got a documented resolution as opposed to something that we were,
You're just saying
Pulling out
like
of our-
provide the board with an update?
No, he
The-
wants
a-
a resolution that you guys can vote on to actually send it to the township board. That's what he's saying. So you would actually have which would conclude that you are requesting the township board approve that it be released for distribution.
Okay.
they know what they're getting.
Kind of outlining the process in the
Yeah.
resolution. What we did.
But they can't pull that together in time for our next meeting.
I don't want change, I'm not
You
asking
just
for
want
the
the,
change.
you just want the
I
resolution.
just want the resolution,
He just wants the resolution.
Okay.
a formal resolution
Just
that,
get along.
I don't feel comfortable sending, I think the board would like to see the actual,
final
the
document.
final document, or not the final, but the final draft of all.
The township board will see the draft
Okay,
with all your changes.
they
Yes.
will.
Oh, absolutely. They're going to see all these changes we've talked about tonight, they will be made, and that will be what goes to the township board.
Okay.
And changes, there'll be opportunity to fine tune it even
Right.
more after the 60-day review period and so
So-
forth,
Yes.
before we officially approve it.
That's correct.
So I'm just trying to understand, what does the resolution then do? Help me, I guess, understand. I'm sorry that I'm not following this.
Yeah, I'm not either.
So what
Here's
does-
my- here's my
if we don't
question.
have
So
a
it's,
draft-
because,
I have a question. Will it be known as the 4-year plan because it's taken us so long?
because what you're really doing is just requesting the township board, permission of the township board to release the draft for comments from surrounding communities and other appropriate agencies. That's essentially what you're asking for.
Right.
I think what Mr. Gross is saying, he would like to say a little bit more of the background before getting to that concluding sentence, and would like to review that. So I think that's your choice, whether you want to do that or whether you want to just make the motion.
Yes, a matter of 2 weeks.
But there's no draft to go with the resolution.
No,
Okay.
because they're going to provide a final draft after that.
Okay.
So we're gonna tell them, they're gonna get a draft pretty soon, is that what our resolution's gonna say.
Right.
Right. That's where I'm not understanding what the
Yeah, I don't
resolution
really-
accomplishes. Why not just wait?
I think
They're not expecting.
I probably would just wait the
I
full
mean,
month.
just tonight say, okay, board, here it is.
No, I'm not saying that either, but I'm just saying, we don't need to tell them it's still coming. They know we're working through it. So if it
We
doesn't
usually
appear
get this-
now, then it's just gonna appear the next month.
Well, you'll do the changes and then send it over, and then you'll
Right.
put that into the board book, which is,
Right.
right?
Correct. The two options are,
Working is gonna be cool.
the changes are made either way, and you either see it again before you make the motion to send it to the board, or they were minor enough changes and the big picture is close enough that you don't need to see it again before I send it on to the board. There's the little detail, if you do send it on, whether we have the resolution or not, but
It's us viewing it again, is the thing.
whether you view it before it's released to the board.
So if you want to view it again, it would be back on your agenda for February 16th, and then you could vote at that time to send it to the township board. That, if you want to see the complete, all the changes again, then it would be on your agenda the 16th.
So, but we still have the 63 days after the board says, here you go.
Correct.
The board may make recommendations to us.
Themselves too, yeah.
Did I text you?
So the question would be is, do we want to see it again before we make, to forward that on to the board?
I was happy with the way the
That's-
changes
that's
came
just
from
what was
just our
explained.
notes.
No.
I think it'll be,
I don't want to see another draft. I just want to have a resolution that is formulated, that officially sends it to the township board. And you're saying we can do that tonight, and
isn't it just making a motion to do it?
It's the motion, whether it stays here, it gets forwarded on to the board.
okay, if somebody wants to make that motion, I guess that's,
Okay, I mean, so I was just trying to understand if people want to see it here, or, so it sounds, I mean,
Mr. Chair?
yes,
I
Mr.
move that
Walker.
we instantly forward it to the board, without further ado.
After the changes are made.
that's my point.
With the changes that
As
we
discussed.
discussed
That's
this
up to
evening.
Rod. If Rod says yes.
Yes. With the changes discussed this evening, forwarded to the township board to request permission to release it to reviewing agencies and surrounding communities.
Yeah, what Rod said.
Mr. Walker, is that, you agree with
I'll
that?
amend my motion.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a second on the motion? Or support?
Support.
Okay, support by Mr. St. Henry. Further discussion on the motion? So this is to forward a recommendation, sorry, to forward the draft.
As amended.
Master plan as amended, as discussed here this evening, to the board to release for the 63-day review period.
And I just want to make sure I'm
Yeah,
asking
go
the
ahead,
question.
please.
So that will happen, and then it comes to the board, and we vote on it then, if it's
Vote
going
on
to
whether or
actually-
not to release it. You're not approving it.
not.
You're just voting whether or not
Whether or not
it's
to
ready
release
to
it.
be released for review.
So there will be plenty of time for the board to have a look at it as well, in between that time. Right?
I can
a matter of
work with
when
the
you want.
planner on when his updates are done to know what meeting I'm putting it on to the Board of Trustees. So that it gives them, obviously, I have my deadlines that it has to be to them, and he has his deadlines on getting it done. So it will all fall in line with the way the calendar goes.
So Rod, I will forward to you my written comments. Take them or leave them. And if you have any questions, call me. Something doesn't make sense, and you go from there.
So this is where this is an issue,
Yeah,
right?
because we don't know
haven't
what your
discussed it
comments
here
are.
tonight. So
Okay, but we
that's-
haven't discussed all of
Right,
all of,
but, and that, so,
Kim's.
right, so that's where I'm gonna
Okay.
say we need to just keep it here for one additional month for one more draft. Because there can't be one individual that submits comments after tonight, after everyone's had a chance to discuss it, and have it up to Rod. So then I'm gonna say we need to keep it here. Because the point of the discussion here tonight is to lay everything out there. I'm not, and that's, to be clear.
My big
We
issues
have
I
the right to
discussed.
do, we have, but there can't be additional items
Okay.
that we put on
All right.
Rod.
Well, you know what, guys? I read it and I looked at it and you didn't get my comments. My fault. So
But you have that opportunity to though. So then there's no, that we don't
I don't think a
have
month's difference. I agree with you.
Right, so we have the
I
time.
withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. So I would make a motion that we have Giffords Webster revise the master plan as discussed this evening. Please submit comments, additional comments for
ASAP
as soon as possible.
this
That
week.
they can be discussed and that we can touch base on those comments here at our next workshop meeting. That would be my motion. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Walker. Further
Right,
discussion on that
hold on.
motion.
Who do we got? We got Reynolds. Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
Mr. Walker. Further discussion. Public comment on the motion. Okay. Roll call, please.
Walker.
Yes.
Bracken.
Yes.
St. Henry.
Yep.
Gross.
Yes.
Urbanowski.
Yes.
Gingell.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that said, please submit all comments as soon as possible to Rod, so then we can
Set a
schedule.
deadline.
Would,
7 days.
Well, by Friday, really.
You're gonna have my thoughts tomorrow.
Okay,
Okay.
please.
do
Yes.
you,
So Friday, January 21st.
Friday, 5 PM.
Yep,
5 p.m.
all comments in.
Yep.
Okay.
Forever hold your peace.
Any other concluding comments on the unfinished business topic of master plan? Mr. Walker?
None.
Okay. All right, any other comments? Okay. Public comments? Seeing none. Communications? Don't have any. Planners report and education. Tammy has provided us with the Michigan Association of Planning upcoming events, including the Woodlands workshop that some of us are attending next Tuesday from 5:30 to 7, I believe.
Let me look at it real quick. And everyone that told me they were interested should have received an email from your township email confirming it. If you did not get it, let me know. You're gonna need it to get into it.
it's 5:30 to 7.
Yes, 5:30 to 7.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't crazy. I mean, I am, but.
I mean,
Okay, and then there's obviously other training opportunities through APA. Committee reports, we don't have any. Our next meeting on February 2nd, 2022, we have a public hearing at 7:05 for PC case 2021-78, Woodlands Planned Unit Development PUD concept located at vacant parcels located east of 310 Walden Road, Sidwell 0923351024, and 330 South Lapeer Road, Sidwell 0926101021. The applicant, Detroit Riverside Capital, is proposing to rezone the property from suburban estates, single-family R2, general business to PUD. That leads to chairman comments. I don't have any. Thank you very much for everyone for the discussion. I know it's hot topics talking about our favorite master plan, but they are important, so. Mrs. Gingell,
No comments.
Mr. Walker.
In case any of you have not heard that the book sale of the library this weekend is off.
yeah.
We had no, we had some COVID and we had no volunteers. So we're gonna, our next one will be sometime in May and I'll let you all know about that. I mean, excuse me, we didn't
Have enough.
have enough volunteers. I apologize.
Mr. St. Henry.
I'm good tonight, believe it or not.
Mr. Gross.
I'm fine.
Mrs. Urbanowski.
Thank you very much for putting up with us tonight. I think that we're a passionate group of people who are really interested in what's going on with this, so I'm pretty, I'm happy that we sat here longer than we thought we were going to. So I appreciate everyone's input on this. And I did volunteer for the book fair, and I was very sad when I got a cancel.
Mr. Bracken?
Nothing for me.
All right, with that said, we now have 9:01. I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Support by Mrs. Gingell. All those in favor, please state with aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.